Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Good Stuff. Really pumped up for today. I'm excited. A guy I just came in contact with here not too long ago. I know you're going to love his path, his story, and a lot of insight that he will provide. So, as always, looking forward to hearing from you on this. But without further ado, let's jump in right away. Former Cleveland Indians stud and current podcast host of 99 Miles Per Hour, Perci Garner. Perci, it's great to have you, man.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, your microphone and headphones are a lot better than what I got here. You're showing me up. Hey, I want to jump in right away to some good stuff. I mean, your path, I don't know how many people know everything about it. Of course, we've talked about Eric Dumaruth here recently and at Dover, and him playing for me up at Notre Dame College. But you being a great athlete, not getting to shoot as much as him those last 2 years of school, but nonetheless, a really good football player, headed to Ball State under a coach that we found out we each knew in Stan Parrish. But man, how crazy is all this that you go there for football and then make the transition to baseball? Talk a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Well, it was an honor to go to Ball State. It's kind of funny. I went to a lot of colleges on visits, and none of them told me that I could play both. So those dreams were kind of crushed. But when I went to Ball State, I was focusing on football. But they had a great quarterback in Nate Davis, and it was going to be an uphill climb to kind of take his job. So I was going to have to wait for him to get drafted. But it didn't work out as much as I planned. But once I contacted Greg Beals, who is now the Ohio State baseball coach, he was fortunate to let me try out because he had already had his tryouts. So he did me a favor. And it was not showing a promise on my first couple days there at practice. I couldn't play catch with the coach who was 60 feet away, which what little leaguers can do. I was not able to do that. But luckily on the fifth or sixth day, I think, he allowed me to get off the mound. And I was in the locker room just praying, Lord, like, let me throw decent today just so, I have an opportunity to play baseball. And I'm throwing, and the whole team's behind me, and the coaches with the radar gun. And it was just, I was glad my couple pitches went near the catcher, and They were laughing. And they told me to keep throwing, though. So eventually they did tell me I was on the team. They're like, welcome to the team. And I was like, seriously? They're like, yeah, you were 91 to 93, and we would love to have you. And I was just overjoyed at that point.
Wow. Maybe you should call the podcast 91 to 93 since that's where it started, right?
Exactly.
Hey, I want to know where you're at when it comes to this. Like, I want you to talk to us about confidence. When you tell this story, I think to myself, like, I was a pretty good player my senior year, scored. We had a great year. And then I go in my freshman year of college, and I'm like, man, I've got this. This is nothing. And I went from like best player to like 10th on the depth chart, right? And so it just, I think there's probably been times where you've had a lot of this, and there's probably been times where you've had none of this. To me, it is the most powerful thing for an athlete, right? I mean, the guys that I've coached, when they have it, it's a dynamic thing. And when they don't, how you're just figuring out ways to restore it. So speak into that a little bit for some of our listeners, because even if they're coaches or they're business leaders, everybody, regardless of what they're telling us, if they're transparent, if they're authentic, we've all been here. We've had a lot of it. Maybe we've had some of it. We've had none of it. So let us know where that fits in with you on your path in terms of confidence.
I would agree. I've been at all stages. But I would say what has hurt me in my career is I've spent most of my career in baseball or business, anything, at the no confidence level or just some. I did envy a lot of players. I had players on my team who technically weren't as talented as me, but just had a confidence about themselves, and it showed. And I envied that just because they were out there playing so free. And when you have a lack of confidence, obviously there's a lot of stuff you can't perform to the best of your ability because you're not out there. You're kind of, I like to say it, you're paralyzed by fear to make a mistake, or there's a lot of factors that come in. But then when you do get to that point of having the correct confidence level, which I would say is just, if you believe in your abilities and the hard work and preparation you've done, then you're just going to go out there and play and not worry about, mistakes or not doing as well. When you have your confidence level, you're out there, you're, in my aspect, you're slinging the ball, you'd have no remorse, and you're just out there with reckless abandon.
For
and
sure.
you're just playing and having fun. But I think it's one of the most important things to turn an athlete to the next level, no matter if he's talented or mid-level talented. If you have confidence, it can get you over the hump.
Yeah, and for myself, like I don't know if maybe I was as good as I thought I was, or I think of like, we talk about Doomy, like there was a guy on the team that was 5'7", 5'8". He was second on the team in rebounding behind Doomy, who was a rebounding machine.
Wow.
But it was his confidence. Like he just thought that he was so good. You mentioned some key words in there that might be a part of this answer for you. So how do people get that confidence? Like how is it formed? Is it something that everybody can subscribe to eventually through some of these things, or is it just something that some people are never going to have?
Well, I think this is very key. So the example I was shown, because growing up, like even in football games in high school, I'd get a couple completions, then the confidence would kind of come back, like, okay, I can do this. I would say that's proof that, you don't like success. I always thought success breeds confidence. Success breeds confidence. But then one of the all-time greats in baseball, Roy Halladay, rest in peace, he was a big proponent of preparation breeds success, breeds confidence. If you prepare, done everything you possibly can, that's workout, that's mentally prepare yourself with film or just knowing your opponent and knowing what you have to do, then you know that you've done everything in your power. So you can just go out and take care of business. And we all say, especially as like a coach yourself, the game is supposed to be fun. If you've done all the work in practice, that can obviously take care of itself. But it's most important that you prepare each day, even with the little things, preparing for practice. It's not always preparing for the game. You got to have your mind right to get better every day. And I think if you prepare the way you're supposed to, then I feel like you really have no other choice but to be confident about what you got to go into.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I would say two things come to mind for me. I don't know if it's relatable to you, but you just worry about the things you can control versus the things that you can't control. I know it's a big life philosophy for me now, but I think as an athlete, you take care of those things and you know what you are versus what you're not. And I think the other thing, and that is food, that's sleep, that's all those things, right? I mean, you control those things, and that's a part of the preparation that you just touched upon. And isn't it? It's winning in the dark, right? It's are you able to do all the things when the lights aren't on, so you've earned the right to do them when the lights are on, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
ultimately what it comes down to. I got to think I'm just really anxious to know this from any and everyone is where does failure fit in that, Percy? Like how much has that shaped you, and then what did that do? I guess two-part question in terms of that confidence.
Well, I think failure is a big part of anything you do. Because if you're not failing, then I don't think you're doing anything. And if basically that's my opinion. But then I kind of grasped more on that once I heard guys like Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. I know Michael Jordan had that commercial back in the day about all
Yeah.
the times he's missed shots and stuff like that. And it kind of just made that idea sink deeper into my brain and kind of make imprints there where I'm thinking, hey, you know, especially in sports other than baseball is a part of the game. I mean, if you fail as a hitter 70% of the time, you're great.
Yeah.
Um, so
Crazy.
I always call it baseball a man's game, even though it's not contact like basketball and football. Uh, it takes a different type of human to be able to get up every day, especially after 0 and 4 strikeouts or anything like that, a bad day, and just get right back on the your routine, your film watching, you're hitting off a tee or your bullpens. It takes a different type of person to be able to just hop on after a day, because I was one of those where after a bad game, I felt like my whole stat sheet was on my forehead everywhere I went. And everyone could just see that, dang, he gave up 7 runs yesterday or whatever. But I think it's important that failure be a part of your process as a learning individual and an athlete. And then once you get on that failure train, you kind of understand like, all right, obviously I don't want to fail all the time. But when you are able to learn from that failure and then take your performance to another level, then you start to realize like, okay, failure is something that happens when I get out of my comfort zone. When I get out of my comfort zone, I get to another level. So then you kind of seek out failure in a way.
100%. I think this is you right into the next thing I was going to ask you about. I mean, to me, it's resiliency, and then you touched on comfort, but in there is fear, and in there is other things that you might be telling yourself that shatters that confidence and all that. So if we know that failure shapes us and molds us into being better, then what are we so afraid of? Like, why do people not want to get out of their comfort zone?
I mean, we enjoy it. If you think spirituality with, in your quest with Christ, I mean, he might be calling you to do something, but we like our lives. We go to work, we come home, we participate in our hobbies, hang out with our kids. Maybe take them to the little league games. We just think that's what we're supposed to do. And comfort, it's easier in some people's minds. But now I know, like, hey, when I get out of my comfort zone, yes, in that moment, it is not, it
Right.
isn't fun
Yeah.
per se, especially when you're having, and I kind of stole that from you, from that serve conference that you spoke at, the start, stop, and keep. I literally took that home that night
Yeah.
and was like, I went right to my son. I didn't go to my wife yet because I didn't know if I was
Yeah.
ready to hear what she was
Don't
going
do
to.
that. Don't do that. I'm glad you got something. I thought when I looked one time you were sleeping. No, no, no. But yeah, don't do that. It's a good one though.
Yeah, but I got some feedback from my son that I was
Yeah,
like, wow, okay.
that's
I didn't even
awesome.
know he cared about that. So,
Hmm.
um, being comfortable sounds good, but it is really, you're never going to progress as a human being, as a father, as a husband, as a coach, as a player, as a business person, if you stay in your comfort zone.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I just want to pause real quick and tell people, man, I don't know about you that are listening or Percy, if you'd even agree with this, but I go back and I look at my career and I look at some of the things individually I've been a part of and then collectively as a team. And there was some type of failure along that way. And I'm standing here, I mean, I wouldn't have met the people I've met, the places I've gone, be where I'm at today if it wasn't for that. So I would highly suggest people do embrace that. Tell me one thing that I'm amazed about with professional athletes. I think they do a lot of things extremely well. I'm not putting them on a pedestal here, but I think the ability to bounce back quicker than most is what they do. I watch the Indians and they lose 14 to nothing. The next day they win 10-6, or especially baseball, because you're doing 162 times a year plus the playoffs. Like they don't have time. But how is it, and even if it's Sunday to Sunday in the NFL, they still have the ability to bounce back throughout their preparation in that week and then being a completely different team. How is it that athletes at that level are wired in that manner?
Well, I think it's just what you've kind of built growing up and getting to that point. I mean, I know in my life, I lost both my parents to cancer. My mom was, in prison, but you also have a support system. So I don't think anyone makes it or gets to a point where they can overcome adversity by themselves, or just by facing it. You have to have some type of support system. I had great teachers, coaches who kind of taught me how to deal with adversity and understand that, hey, you're going to face this. There's no avoiding it. You just got to learn how to overcome it and get back. So, and even with the reference you made to football, yes, it's Sunday to Sunday, but as a quarterback throwing an interception, you could, whew, it's never good, especially in the NFL. Like when people are watching Baker Mayfield, every wrong move he makes, he's got to overcome adversity. So obviously there's different levels, but when you look at adversity, it's something that should be something that you kind of attack and not just kind of wait for someone to save you. And I think that's all learned in the process, and where you get to a professional athlete where it just becomes part of your job, to overcome adversity, no matter what that is. And I mean, if you've learned it and you've had a good support system, then I feel like it's something that you don't really think about anymore. Like, oh, this is adversity, this is hardship I'm facing. You kind of look at it as, okay, I messed up there, or I didn't perform there the way I wanted. How do I get better? How do I improve next time? And you stop looking at it as, dang, this is a failure. Dang, I messed up. And you just start looking at it as an opportunity to learn.
I guess that's why I'm biased to basketball. I call it next play mentality, right? I make a mistake and a second later I can make up for it. Baseball,
True.
it's like I strike out, it might be an hour before I bat again. I throw an interception, it might be 10, 15 minutes. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I guess if you give a home run up on the mound, you could relate and you got to go back in there.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to, yeah, your story in that adversity, Percy. I mean, what a story there with your parents, as you mentioned. What got you through those times? I know, knowing you the little that I know you so far, and you alluded to it just a little bit ago. I know faith is a big part of that, and you can speak to that. But how was all that for you as a young person?
Well, I think even the faith factor, it didn't just come to me. I had people in my life, my aunt, my grandmother, they just kind of put me in the right positions and kind of gave me the opportunity. Obviously, I didn't always take it right away, but as we mature, we start to understand, what is being put in front of us and how to, soak it up as much as we can. Once my dad made the step and to get saved and to change his lifestyle, that is what just took off for me in my faith space of my life.
That's awesome.
And then once he got sick and how he handled it all and just the way he would deal with people when I knew he was in pain or he didn't want to do chemo or anything like this, because he was traveling different states and stuff. Because 1999 and 2000s, are we're not as advanced in the cancer treatment. So he was traveling everywhere, and I know sometimes he just didn't want to do it, but learning from him in that tough time that, hey, I got kids. I want to, he was even thinking about being an example and, someone I looked up to at that time, not just thinking, I got cancer here is probably going to, we know the end result. It was, hey, I'm going to show that I'm not giving up and just kind of be an example for my children. But in my mom's sake, she was always, and I kind of got my looks from her and my laugh, which is unfortunate. People
Great, it's great laugh. Nah, it's good. Man.
But just knowing what I've been through and what they've been through, they kind of know how to tailor their parenting. My dad was, in the military, and he was more strict with me, which at the time I didn't like, but now I understand. Yeah, right. I'm trying to get my son to understand that as well.
Good luck.
Yes, I'm learning.
If you do, you could write a book.
But I think it's something that we all need people in our lives. And I think young people don't seek out as much. I was lucky. I didn't really have to seek it out. It just, in the community of Dover, people just kind of longed to help me as much as they could because they saw that I cared. And if you see someone care about themselves, then it's, someone who wants to help themselves, it's easier to help them out. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think that goes back to, you just can't do life alone, right? And I think the people that you're talking about and surrounding yourself with, and I know I would love to hear this now, especially now that you're out of the game. I think they're rooted in a foundation that's firm, but then they've got good habits. Like, habits to me are so crucial, especially over goals now. Goals have an end game. Habits are there to stay, and they keep you going. They give you the opportunity to sustain. What are some of those habits that you had maybe as an athlete that you've carried over now into your life and the different roles that you have, or even the habits that you've picked up on, of the people that surround you?
I would say, first and foremost, just knowing my responsibility as a person at any point in time in my life, and knowing that I have to have the discipline to get the job done. If I don't want to get up in the morning, go to lifting, we had lifting every day before school. If I miss that, I'm letting teammates down, not just going to get in trouble by Coach Ift. My teammates are going to look at me one way, like, this is our quarterback, and going to the next step, like with my aunt, she worked a job that she necessarily didn't love getting up and doing. And she was waking up at 5 a.m. to go work. And she did that for 30 years. Just knowing there's some people that have to sacrifice and to have the discipline to get in a routine, overcome, the boring and monotonous task, which I think you have to master. I got that from, not sure if you know about Andy Frasillo, but he had a podcast and he was talking about mastering the monotonous. And I kind of focus on that stuff now because you don't want to just go through the motions. Because my dad, obviously being a military guy, those small things he would get on me about. I'm like, Dad, it's just a dish or something small. And I didn't understand why he was making sure I did all those things right. Now I do. And it's starting to, obviously I wish he was here that I could tell him, like, I appreciate what you did. Because at the time I was like, my dad's the worst, he's the meanest. But obviously having those people in your life, it definitely makes an impact.
Well, I talked to somebody a couple of weeks ago that they said that they never realized how dumb their dad was when they were like 14 or 15, and then he got so smart by the time they were 20, But I think it goes back to something I probably tell my kids every day: how you do anything is how you do everything. And you hit the key word there in discipline. I mean, I try to tell my boys, embrace boring. Like, and some people will say, well, you got to have a passion, and I get all that, but it at some point does get boring because of the monotony. You know what I mean? So you have to embrace it, and you have to understand that I think it is a process, and that it will happen over time. And so the discipline that you talked about, I think this kind of goes into where I'm thinking next of asking you, like, everybody that sits down and turns on the TV, you know, I don't know that they'll ever understand what it takes to get to that point, right? You alluded to some of this already, but just give our listeners somewhat of an idea of that grind, of that process. Like, I've got people that will even tell me, like, LeBron doesn't work that hard and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Like, it just baffles me, you know. So
Wow.
so give people a glimpse into that, because you've been around some high level people that I want to talk about in general, but give them an idea, like, what does it take?
I think it just takes a commitment every day. You can say one day, you know what, I'm gonna do this. You know, and someone can get you hyped, like a Kevin Bille could talk to you and get you really excited. But you're not always going to have a Kevin Bille there to say, "Hey, get up, let's go, let's get after it."
For
It's
sure.
it's making a commitment every day that you wake up, having people say, "Hey, what's your why?" or something like that. You got to
Mhm.
have some type of reason that is driving you. I don't want to say motivating because that's almost like happiness. It's kind of
Mhm.
temporary, but something that drives you to keep doing what you're doing. If you wake up and you're just like, oh, going through the motions, it kind of just it doesn't make it worth it to me. If you're gonna go to professional ball and go through the motions, which I did at certain points in my career, it's almost like why be there? There's someone out there that probably would just die to be in your position.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that should be your the reason to be driven, but
Right.
that is something that kind of pushed me in those hard days. Like, you know
Mhm.
what? There's someone out there that maybe not be as talented as I am, but they would kill to be in this position, and they would take advantage of it and wouldn't kind of get complacent. So though to getting through those days, because I had to remind my teammates all the time, like, guys, we're playing with a ball for a job. Not many people can say this. Do not take this for granted. And I would also try to live by that as well. Just because obviously as a kid, you're like, yeah, to be a professional athlete, that would be
Yeah. Yeah.
great. You don't really think, and to be honest, I didn't think it was real. Coming from Dover, it's a small
Mhm.
city. I didn't think it was a real thing until it happened. And having habits that you provide over the course of your life and career, obviously because I had to goal to get there. But
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
I think I didn't really get to the next levels because I didn't think about the next thing. Like, okay, I've reached professional league. I've got to play with the Indians. This is great. But this isn't the end.
Yeah.
It's
Not
just
the
like
best version. Yeah. Not the best.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you always want to look forward, and like you said, goals are out there, but the stuff day to day, I think I looked too far forward, and I always thought about the stuff I couldn't control, and that kind of overtook my mind and kind of kept me away from focusing on the right now and being present. And I think that's something I think LeBron talks about that all the time. Even when we deep down probably know he's thinking, all right, I'm getting close to an NBA ring. He's like,
Right.
oh no, every day we want to get better. We want to take one game at a time. We're just like, okay. But I mean, as hard as that sounds, and it's something that we have to take to heart, and you have to do that each day at work. I love my job, but every part of any, you can have the most passion, you could be doing whatever you love. There are going to be some parts of that job
Right.
that are boring and monotonous, and you just got to kind of get yourself ready to take it, one step at a time and go at it full go, and not kind of just glaze over this one little act. It's got to be something you focus on.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's good. That's good. So, is there one thing, as you've got your tiers when you get to even the professionals, right? You got your tiers on any team. I don't care if it's our son's t-ball team right now, all the way up. There's great, there's good, there's maybe average, there's poor. When you get to the professional, when you get there, what separates those other guys? Not necessarily LeBron, but I don't know if I want to talk Indians as much as I have to. I'm still in mourning over the loss, man. But like a Frankie Lindor, a Jose Ramirez, there's a separation. A Shane Bieber, a Corey Kluber, however you want to. There's a
Mm.
separation, right? You understand where I'm at? Like, what
Yep.
is it? Is there one thing that you would pinpoint that you've seen? Is there a couple things? Speak into that.
I would say they just won't let themselves take a day off or a step backwards. They always feel that they have to do something to get an edge, to get better that day or that next hour. From what I understand about Bieber, even before he made it to Cleveland, because he was looking at me like, "Hey, you're Perci Garner, you're in the big leagues," when he got drafted, and now he's triple crown pitcher. And I know the things didn't end well like he wanted, but we know what kind of career he has potential to have. But guys like that, even when you're the greatest, I mean, we all watched The Last Dance. Jordan was not like, well, I'm the greatest, I can probably relax, still win these games. No, like he's still in attack mode. And those guys that are able to still be in attack mode. And I just talked about myself last question, that when I got there, I was just like, I'm here. I'm with the Indians. This is crazy. Guys that like Kluber, even though he struggled to get to the Indians, when he got there, he wasn't like, well, I'm here, guys. He was like, all right, how can I become the best Corey Kluber I can be?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably one of the most important things you can have as an athlete. Obviously, there's a quote in the YMCA, or I think it's the YMCA. It says, those who, what is it? I got to know this. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah, right.
So that, when I saw that, I was like, oh man, like there were some points in my life where I'm like, I'm better than these guys. And then I kind of felt ashamed, just because when I look at those athletes like Jordan and Kobe, they don't just sit back and let their talent, do all the work. They're in the gym, they are working out, and they are taking pride. And I call it just taking pride in the gifts that God gave you. I mean, when you start bringing them into the picture, you feel terrible if you're not working hard.
Well, and they just, like you said, I think they just value each day, right, and what it presents, and they get the most of it. August 31st, 2016. I mean, it's got to be a day that you'll just always remember, right, Percy?
What do? No, I'm joking. Yeah, definitely, man.
Oh, did I screw that up?
No, that's the perfect day. That was magical, man. My debut with the Indians in pro ball. It just didn't seem real until it was. I just remember trotting out to the mound, and it just felt like my torso was floating to the mound. There was no legs involved, and just being presented with that opportunity, talking with Tito about how we were going to attack the start of my career. It just made it all like let's go. This is it. Let's let's get out there and throw the ball. And another thing I want to remember is, even though I was going up against Miguel Cabrera, he still puts his pants on, his jersey on, just like the old thing, just like I do.
Yep.
And I would say for most people, you might get a little starstruck sometimes. And even the greatest players, they admit it.
Yeah.
But you always got to know you got to be on task, focus on your task. You got a job to do. And, maybe look at it as, I got to beat this dude, and that's what I tried to do.
Give us a little bit, an inside look, if you will. I was talking to you a little bit about Bob DiBiasio. He used to play morning hoops at Notre Dame every morning. And, I would always try to pick on him a little bit. And we ended up doing a fundraiser together. I always wanted, hey, tell me what's going on with the Indians. Tell me how can this reflect in our program, and what do we got to do with recruiting? How do you bring free agents in? I just always wanted a taste of that, because I had a ton of respect for the culture that has been created and is still going on. Like it's there, it's evident, right? And I mean, I know, like Terry Francona, I love the dude. Don't even know him, obviously, but tell us what makes him so special. Tell us what makes that organization and culture so special.
So this may sound, I don't care how it sounds. They care about their players, plain and simple. You don't feel like an asset. You feel like it's a family. Each player cared about themselves. When I got called up, we had Andrew Miller, Lindor, Napoli. We had Carlos Santana, Coco Crisp, Rajay Davis. We had a lot of guys who had a lot of time in the league. And there's a saying in baseball, when a guy has been in the bigs and you're a minor leaguer or a rookie, they league you. They don't really. It's not their responsibility to hold your hand through this. They're trying to get their career, and they don't want their spots taken. But when I got to Cleveland, man, the amount of attention to detail of, hey, we want to make sure you're prepared to help this team win. We want to make sure you're doing everything you need to do to get better. And it was just, I had input too as well. It wasn't just like, hey, to be honest, when I got to Pro Bowl, I thought it was going to be do everything on your own. It's your responsibility to make sure you're in the best shape, eat the best way possible, and all that. But that was not the case with the Indians, and it was definitely a family. We even ran our conditioning. We ran as a team. I felt like I was in Little League. I was like, this is
Wow,
crazy. Yeah,
that's impressive.
it was magical.
So what, man, going back to another hurting point for me, I was there at Game 7 in 2016. I escaped right away as soon as that final out happened. What made that team so special? I'm sure it had something to do with what you just alluded to and caring for each other, but is there anything else, or was that the special sauce, if you will?
I think it was just everyone played for each other, even though we had some big names on that team. There wasn't guys out there saying, all right, I need this amount of saves in my contract to get a bonus, or I'm on my contract here. I got to make sure I get mine. I need to steal this base, even though it might cost my team an out. There wasn't a lot of that, if at all, when I was up there. It just felt like, hey, we knew what the goal was. We knew not many people thought it was possible. And that was my first thought to get up there, help the team clinch. It wasn't, hey, get your feet wet, pitch in the big leagues, it's going to be fun. It was, we are a couple games up and we have to win these games. And we were playing Detroit Tigers who were behind us. So it was, like, we got to focus on the goal, and everyone's a part of this goal. So we want everyone clicking on all cylinders. No one's being left behind. And it was just magical, man. It was crazy. Yeah. I feel like some people almost had heart attacks sometimes watching those games.
Oh, they were great, man. They were great. So, like, have you, as we wrap up and get into the rapid fire part, how has it been, the transition? I'm on a much, much lower level than what you did. I played overseas and I came back, but that transition was tough for me, and just being done with it. Have you struggled with that? Have you conquered it? Is it off and on? Where are you at? Can you speak to that a little bit?
I would say I haven't conquered it at all. Just seeing watching the games still kind of just like, just because you're never going to get that experience back. I will say, converting into business, though, and me being a salesman, it's still kind of competitive. I got guys I'm going out and competing against for, to win business. And that kind of is fun. It's obviously not the same. But I would say most of all, I'm learning. There's a lot to learn. And I kind of, when you're 18, 19, 20, you think learning is overrated, but then when you get older, you start to understand. And I have I want to learn stuff. So I'm taking on new challenges, but the transition is a little bit easier, I would say, for me, because a lot of people, you could look at this as a bad way, but a lot of people remind me constantly, and because I'm in my hometown area, so they bring it up a lot. So it kind of still feels like, I still get notarized as a Cleveland Indian, and that feels good. Not even gonna front at all.
Yeah, right.
But it has made it a little bit easier for me.
Yeah. And then there's always just that new phase of, like you said, of when you were 18, 19 and knew everything and realized you knew nothing, right? And so as we wrap up here, you gotta just off the cuff here, you got a favorite baseball story, or any story in general that you could share that everybody would enjoy hearing?
I guess it doesn't really involve baseball, but if you go back on Danny Salazar's timeline on Instagram, you can find this clip of Jose Ramirez. So it was the VR headset thing, and he's sitting in the clubhouse, and Danny Salazar puts it on his face, and he's like, and Jose doesn't really know much English, but he's speaking in Spanish, and the stuff is getting close to his face, you can tell, and I think something jumps out at him, and he jumps back and falls out of the back of his chair. That was definitely kind of hilarious.
Oh man, I could see that from Jose. We were literally talking about him this morning with that stuff. His clip of him and Bauer over COVID hitting out in the desert where the home run pitch ball was one of the best. 3-4 minutes I've ever watched. So, well, hey man, who would have thought 12, 13 years ago you'd be on here with an interview with me and doing a rapid fire called 3-pointers. So I'm gonna dish off to you and let you shoot all those threes you didn't get to shoot those last 2 years. All right. And take your time if you need to. But number one, if people could learn one thing, if you want to just take one thing from this talk, what would it be?
Believe in yourself. God gave you gifts. Realize what those gifts are by praying. and take advantage and better those gifts to share his light.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, if Percy could come over here where Kevin's at and ask Percy a question, what would that question be that I did not ask today?
I'm gonna go back to what our weightlifting coach at Phillies used to always ask when you leave the weight room, and it always made you turn around and go do another exercise. Do you feel that you got enough work in today?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's good. Probably made you feel bad every time.
Yeah, every time.
Last thing, I always say good stuff, and I know that's the name of this. Like, what's some good stuff that you can give us right now in closing, in general, whether you feel it's fitting for our time, whatever you think, some good stuff, Percy.
Um, I would say that everyone has issues, mentally, physically, whatever they are. Um, Being vulnerable doesn't push people away; it brings people closer. Don't be afraid to share whatever it is on your mind with somebody that you trust. It's important.
Man, my friends, that is good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, let's just talk to our people here real quick in closing. Tell us a little bit about this podcast. Tell us a little bit about where people can find you at, social media wise, all that.
Okay, the podcast is on all the podcast platforms, and it's on YouTube. It is called 99 Miles Per Hour with Percy, and basically we focus on family, marriage, Jesus, sports, of course, and a little bit of business and technology. And I bring guests on, professionals, teammates, from all aspects and all walks of life, and I kind of use it as a time to learn myself, learn about that person, learn about their struggles, and hopefully can inspire people and also teach them something, just like this podcast.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Love it.
and I would say Twitter, the handle is Perci Garner, just PerciGarner. Instagram is pgarner4, and I try to post, how it is these days. You got to make sure Instagram is all family photos.
All right.
Yeah, and Twitter, I just talk about whatever is on my mind, man.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. Well, that's good. Well, yeah, I think it's hard sometimes when you get involved in these conversations, not to want to take notes, and you got to kind of go back and listen to it later and make it about the guests. So hopefully we've done that today. And man, Percy, I can't. It's been great getting to know you so far. Look forward to staying in touch. I love what you shared today. I think my whole thing is it adding value and impacting others, and you've definitely done both today. So thanks for your time, and definitely look forward to staying in touch with you.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, hey, as always, I think I said at the top of the show, just touch base with us. Let us know what you think. And I know you're going to get a lot out of today's episode with Percy. He knocked it out of the park rather than giving up the homer, right? So thanks again. And until next time, good stuff.